Hello, my name is David Faure and I work for KDAB. In this video, you will see how to use a secondary thread to handle all of the dbus communication from the client so that you can use blocking calls. This is very similar to part 5 of this series, where we moved all of the socket communication to a secondary thread to make it blocking, except here we are going to use dbus APIs to do that. So this is basically an alternative solution to the previous video. It's the same proxy class. We are simply going to use it a little bit differently. Again, here the goal is to be able to write algorithms like this, where we do everything one after the other in a synchronous way, blocking and waiting for a response from the server before we move on. So we can say, get me the matches, wait for the response, read the response, and then for each country, ask for the flag name, wait, and process, right? Very easy algorithms to write. No need to have a list of pending things to do and so on. The way we are going to design this is, again, the connection class stays in the main thread, and it will talk to the dbus worker class, which we run in a secondary thread. And the only ways for the two things to communicate are going to be cross-thread signals and slots, which also includes invoke method as a way to call a slot in an object that we know without having to use a signal on the sender side. We don't need that because we actually know the class, right? Connection knows dbus worker, whereas the other way around, dbus worker does not know connection, so all it can do is emit signals, and connection will connect to that. And of course, this means now dbus worker will be the one that handles the dbus communication, which is done by the proxy class that we have generated called com-kdab people server API. So let's have a look at the code for this. In the connection class, very similar to part 5, we simply create a thread and a worker, move the worker to that thread, and connect to the signals from the worker, right? That's as we saw before. To be able to issue calls from the worker, we use invoke method to make sure that those methods like connect to server, disconnect from server, they are run in the secondary thread. There is a little trick here where when we want to call query person matches on the worker, we have to pass it the two arguments, right? The field and the search value. The problem is those are references. So if in the lambda here, you don't capture by value, but you're captured by reference, you are going to capture a value that goes away by the time it's actually used in a secondary thread when the lambda is being called. That's why we want to make a copy of those two strings, which I do here by using the equal sign to say this is a copy by value. And then it doesn't crash anymore. Quite nice. Now let's have a look at the worker itself. In the worker, we have moved all of the code that handles dbus. So we'll have the service watcher to be notified when the server goes up and down. We'll have the creation of the proxy class. And you see here that just for good measure, I assert that the current thread is not the main thread. So I make sure that this is a secondary thread, which means we'll have no problem making blocking calls. So how about these calls? When we do query person matches, same assert, just to be sure. We can still use the same getMatches method as before, and it still gives us a pending reply, except what we do now, instead of connecting to a signal, is to call wait for finished on this pending reply. So we don't need a watcher at all anymore. We just block on that pending reply until it's available. After doing that, I recommend calling isError to figure out whether what we got back is an error or a proper value. And if it's an error, we can, well, handle the error. What I do here is just occur warning and return. Could be anything else. Now that we know that it's not an error, we can call the value method, and it will get us the actual vector of persons, which we can then process and keep going. And because now everything is synchronous, we can continue directly with the for loop, where for every country, we call getFlagName, and it's the same dance again. We get a pending reply, wait for finished, and process it once we have it, with error handling. So it's quite easy to do that. I see often some code that simply casts, converts the reply to the type. It has implicit conversion, But if you do that, then you very likely forget to do the error handling. So I find it much better to do isError and then value if it's not an error. With this, we are done with dbus. But if you have any more questions about dbus, don't hesitate to ask in a comment. And in the next video, I will move on to something else, which is the REST communication protocol and how to implement a REST client in Qt using QNetwork Access Manager. You can subscribe to our channel if you want to be notified when new video releases come out. Thank you. Bye-bye.